Welcome to the Silver Bulls podcast on the Ozone Radio Network, your authority on all things Ohio State. And now, here are your hosts, Shannon Sommers and Eric at the BBC.
Hey there, Buckeye Nation. Welcome to another edition of the Silver Bulls podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. Eric, I almost threw our old name out there. I was almost like, welcome to the Men of the Scarlet and Gray. See, folks, I am under the influence of an anesthesiologist, and it's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right, yeah.
Shannon went to the doctor and had the connections between his brain and his mouth severed, so
yeah, they had to look to see if there was a connection, and we know where my head's at.
Actually, I'm not so sure about that anymore. That's okay.
Yeah, so as folks didn't understand, so for folks that are listening, we are going to be discussing the Ohio State men's basketball. So I have my man Eric here. Eric, how are we doing today?
Getting by. Certainly better than you.
Yes, I've got like 1,000 things going through my mind. They just announced the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame inductees for the 2018 season. Congratulations to Mr. Jim Thome of the Cleveland Indians. And those that didn't vote for Omar Vizquel, delete your account, turn in your membership, stop watching baseball. I digress.
These are all good suggestions, but I agree with them for everybody. I digress.
Yes. But we're going to have a bonus for you. I got a little bit under the weather, we'll say, for this weekend in order to be able to put out the shows for last week. Eric and I recorded, so we will have that show after this show, so it would be a 2-for-1 deal. So you get bonus coverage, so you get to see how wrong we were last week or how right we were. I don't even remember.
Oh, sweet. They get to listen to my really awful predictions for Nebraska after the Nebraska game.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't have anybody except for James James Palmer Jr.
That was technically true, but their defense was a whole heck of a lot better than I thought it would be.
Yeah, their defense is really good, which, I mean, we'll get into some of it. So with that being said, all right, the Buckeyes just came off a victory against Nebraska at home. I think there was they won by 5 points, I think it was maybe.
Yep, 64-59.
They showed Minnesota that this is Big Ten basketball and you're not a Big Ten team.
I wouldn't quite go that far, but okay, we'll roll with it.
Well, I mean, based on that score, I think it wasn't like a 20-point game or something. It just was
close to it. It was really an 18-point final score, but it was a 16-point game before Kyle Young stole the ball and posterized some poor Minnesota player.
Shoot your shot, young man. Shoot your shot.
Seriously, if they're going up for that, you're by yourself. Just let it go. Don't get posterized.
Especially at the end of the game.
Yeah. Oh, but you're down 16. This defending this shot is not going to do you any honor.
And then I believe there was also because we recorded after the Northwestern game, which was a tight game in itself, and Northwestern is reeling, but they turned around and they beat Minnesota night before last night, so they're 4-5 in the conference. With that, we're turning our attention now to the future, basically, because I mean, Ohio State's 9-0. We all predicted this at the beginning of the season. We all said that they were going to be going for the Big Ten regular season championship. They were the top team in the conference. And if you didn't listen to any of that in the beginning of the shows, please go back and listen. And if you still didn't hear it, just re-listen again. Trust me, it'll be there somewhere. But it's just, I mean, it was, to me as a fan, and we kind of talked about this on the Costa Field. The question was brought up after the Nebraska game because there was only just under 11,000 fans that were there, but it was loud, and it was really good to see the nut house going crazy and being loud, especially towards the end of the game when the team needed them. But then you look, and one of the questions, I guess, from Clay Hall to Chris Holtman was about the fans coming out and stuff. And that automatically triggers the Indian side of me and the many reasons of why fans aren't coming. One of them is, when we discussed, the upper bowl you can get at the ends, behind the backboard on those ends is like $10, but in the middle they're like $20 or more. So, I mean, I think the prices are kind of outrageous for college basketball, but hey. But then...
Well, okay, so let's...
Go ahead.
$20 for a basketball game is not awful, although I do know that those upper bowl seats are kind of mediocre at best. I saw one poster on Twitter comment that St. John Arena was a lot better because the upper bowl seats were over the court, right? Everything was more vertical, so it felt like you were on top of the action, even when you were up in the rafters. The shot spread everything out, right? It has a much larger footprint. So when you are in the upper part of the bowl, you're much further away from the court, much further away from the action, and it's harder to see. So, okay, $20 is not terrible for a college basketball game if it were in St. John Arena. In the shot, maybe that's not so good. And if you want to be in the lower bowl, it's $190.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. That's the price point that I would be shocked at. Heck, when I was a freshman in college, it was $110 for a full season split for men's basketball for a frickin' season. What are we doing?
Yeah, there comes a point in time where you got to sit there and realize, all right, things might be great in Columbus, and I'm not sure what the unemployment rate in Columbus is compared to areas outside of Columbus, especially like if you're trying to get a market in Cleveland and Columbus, because people will drive a couple hours to see a good product. But, I mean, it's not affordable, really, in order to be able to take a family and be a family affair and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And I think the other issue that could be said about it, too, is, for me, it's kind of, and we've discussed this quite a bit through our different shows, is, as a fan, we're kind of waiting for that shoe to drop. When's this going to fall apart, unfortunately? And maybe, I mean, it's just because we're not used to having a consecutive successful basketball in a while, the way that we have.
Right. Yeah. You're probably right about that. We've seen this 3 years running that the team just can't keep it together. Although this team is a lot different than any of the previous three, and it's not just the coaching staff and it's not just the culture, which we're always talking about. The players are engaged, and winning is infectious, as people always say. And you're on a 9-game winning streak and you're working your butt off to keep it going, right? You know that you're getting everybody's best shot, right? The last 3 or 4 basketball games, we've been getting some pretty tough shots from teams that honestly probably shouldn't be giving us that tough of a shot. I mean, yeah, okay, we beat Minnesota by 18, but for a while it didn't look like it was going to be that big of a spread. They were hanging with us a little bit. So, will the other shoe drop? Probably. I mean, we eventually have to play at Purdue, and I work with a Purdue guy, and he was griping that they play Michigan State, the top 2 teams in the conference, Purdue and Michigan State. He didn't include Ohio State in that list. We'll ignore that. He knows I'm a Buckeye fan. Purdue and Michigan State. Purdue only plays Michigan State at Michigan State. And I pointed out, okay, let's count the 3 top teams in the conference. Purdue, Michigan State, and Ohio State. Ohio State plays at Purdue. Purdue plays at Michigan State. Michigan State played at Ohio State. I mean, you couldn't plan for it any better. A round robin of those 3. It's not a full round robin, but everyone plays everyone else, and everyone gets 1 home game out of the top 3. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and then you have the 4th team who has home and homes against everybody except for against Sparty, which is kind of weird.
That is weird.
That it's kind of strange how the schedule has worked itself out this year. But, I mean, I'm putting Michigan in that category of the 4th team when Indiana is really knocking on that door and turning their season around, what it seems like.
About time.
We will be seeing them we'll see them next week before we record
Tuesday.
our next show. Yes.
Tuesday.
Which,
yep.
For Ohio State right now is going to be really, really good because, all right, we just got done playing Nebraska. So we're going to be playing Penn State tonight. So we had Tuesday night off, Wednesday night off. I mean, yes, they had practices, but Penn State's going to give you everything they have, but you have that home field cooking, which is going to be very, very helpful for Ohio State. And then you have a nice break before the Hoosiers come to town.
Yeah, a very needed break, right? There was a lot of conversation about how many games the Buckeyes played. I think it was 4 games in 8 days the Buckeyes played over the last stretch. That's quite a lot. But I will also point out, as I pointed out to Chris Drake, sorry about that, my computer's making awful noises. As I pointed out to Chris Drake on Twitter, at some point, you have to just be able to win these games, because when you get into the postseason, you don't get much of a break. The Big Ten tournament, you play a game every single day, right? You'll play, if you want to win the championship, you're going to play 3 or 4 games in as many days. And then when you get to the NCAA tournament, you're playing 2 games in 48 hours.
Yeah.
You get used to it. So you better be able to step up.
Right. And Ohio State's not having the only schedule like this. I mean, look at Nebraska. When they came to Ohio State, I forget they had, like maybe 3 road games in 5 nights or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers. And you knew that you were going to get your best out of Nebraska still. We discussed how their defense was a lot better than we even thought. But at the same time, even the Ohio State players said afterwards, we didn't have any legs. We weren't getting our legs underneath for our shots to go through, and both teams are struggling by going through it. So it's not only Ohio State that's getting a raw deal. Every team gets that, and it's kind of a way to get the body going to when it comes to the tournament that you're hopefully peaking at the right time if your schedule's set up right and your coaching staff does the right thing.
Right, that's part of it. The other part of it is that you learn how to deal with tired legs, and you learn how to deal with rapid succession games, right? Because it's something you have to deal with. So having that in the middle of the season when, okay, you could afford to cough up a game is not a bad thing to do, because it gives you a little bit of that experience, especially for a team that hasn't gotten a chance to play in the NCAA tournament the last few years, right? And there's no question we're in. So it's nice to have some kind of pseudo tournament experience when teams are going to be giving you their best shot, which they absolutely will in the tournament.
That's still so weird to hear.
I know, right?
I mean, just based on our first show, and we talked about, and we're lucky if we can even get into the NIT because the guard play on this team, there's no depth. The guard, we don't have any guards. We didn't know what we were going to get from a kid that beats Diop. You didn't know what you're going to get from Wesson. Yeah, yep. And all these guys, there's so many question marks. And as the season continued to go on, you're sitting there like, all right, Bates Diop, he's playing as an All-American. He's one of the best in the Big Ten. But what do you do if the team struggles? If he's struggling, what does the team do? And they've answered that. They're finding multiple ways to win games. It's not just, all right, we're going to Keita Bates-Diop in order for every win, putting it on his shoulders. We questioned in the beginning of the season about leadership showing up, about players not wanting to, step up, take the shot, become the guy. And they've been doing it.
Right. Yeah, and this is why leadership is so important. It's not just about one guy being able to win the game. It's about that guy being your go-to, and when the go-to isn't there, someone else wanting to step up to fill the void, right? That's where leadership really becomes valuable. A lot of players are really stepping up to the plate and making big shots when we need them. C.J. Jackson has had a couple where he's dropped a 3-pointer or hit a layup at exactly the critical moment that we need to keep pace with the other team, to keep them from catching up, right? Andre Wesson has had a few great moments, and he's been getting more time because his play is getting better, which is excellent to see. I'm really glad to see Andre getting more time. Micah Potter getting a little bit more time, subbing in for Caleb Wesson when he's got 2 fouls early, 2 BS fouls, by the way. Not that I complain about the refs ever. But Micah Potter's coming in, and he's dropping a 3-pointer now and then, which is great to see from a front court player. But he's also he's stepping up his game a little bit. He's not necessarily scoring lots of points, but he's making plays down low, getting rebounds, fighting in the tough Big Ten front court.
Yeah, and I remember when we were talking about after the Sparty game that with the way he was having such issues with not being able to get in any kind of rhythm in the game with the fouls and basically sitting on the bench, that one of your biggest concerns were he might be lost for the season because of the injury and he might not be able to catch back up. And, well, hats off to the coaching department because they have gotten him back into rhythm and he's starting to become a force and somebody to, you have to count, on the defense, you have to count on him as far as trying to stop him as another weapon for Ohio State, which is nice.
Yes, yeah, and you're exactly right. And good memory because I had partially forgotten that particular comment, but you're right. Hats off to the coaching staff and hats off to the training staff. They've done a good job of figuring out what he needed to be able to strengthen his body, strengthen the I think it was an ankle that was bothering him, and get him back into reasonable playing form, right? Good enough to be able to contribute to the team in a significant way, contribute 10 to 15 minutes every game.
Yeah, and I'm no longer at the point of when is the shoe gonna, the other shoe gonna drop type deal. I'm at the point where, all right, realistically, expectations are that Ohio State is not going to finish the season undefeated. All right. The next 3 games that Ohio State has are at home, and they're the final home games of the season for Ohio State. So today we play Purdue.
Penn State.
I'm even looking right at it. That's what's sad. So tonight, as we edit this, tonight as we play Penn State, Tuesday, January 30th, we welcome the Hoosiers and the battle of who got the better coach for us Ohio State fans, just in order to be able to have some fun with it because, it's just that too early to tell mode. Mm-hmm. And then Sunday, February 4th is the last home game against Illinois before they run out to West Lafayette. I'm sorry, there is another home game after that. It's at Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
So Iowa, and all right, I will delete my account because there are, after the Illinois game, there's 2 home games. They play Iowa February 10th on a Saturday, and they play Rutgers Tuesday, February 20th. So I really am good at researching when I'm looking right at the screen. So
what you're looking for is you're really good at reading when you're looking right at the screen. Reading is the problem here.
I think I could read. I think it's the comprehension part.
Again, connections between.
Yes, I've always been told comprehension has not been my strong suit. It's okay. So anyways, let's look at the Penn State Nittany Lions that are coming in to invade the shot tonight. According to, we've talked about the Ken Palm rankings, which Ohio State, I believe, right now is at number 12.
11.
Are they up to 11th again?
Because they're up to 11. Yep.
They've been bounced around between 11, 12, and 13 within the last couple of weeks. Yeah, they're at 11. And Penn State is 64th in the Ken Palm.
Wow, they're that high. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and, it's tribute to their off-season or their non-conference schedule probably, where they were looking a lot better. I think they're, 3-5 in the conference? They're 3-5 in conference play right now, 13-8 overall. And there's another stat metric person, if you will, that Tom Orr turned me on to from Acosta Field. It's Bart Torvik, Torvik .com, Ohio State. He has at 11th also. I mean, and he uses some different metrics, but he's got Penn State at 54th. And just to give you some kind of idea, he has Nebraska at 65th in his, and no, Nebraska 65th in the Ken Palm, and he has Nebraska at 62. So, I mean, they're both kind of in the same area, but when you look at having Nebraska come in, statistically, it looks like Penn State's a little bit better of a team. What do you think?
Yeah, they are a little bit better of a team. I got a chance to watch Penn State play Northwestern. I think it was right after our game with Minnesota, in fact, which was about 5 days ago. So they've been on a little bit of a break. That was their last game they played. It was at Northwestern. And for a while, they were leading Northwestern. They got out to a pretty good lead early in the game, about 10 points. Northwestern struggled and fought back, and then Penn State sort of carried a 2 to 4 point lead for most of the rest of the way, and then Northwestern ran away with it at the end of the game. And that tells you something. We played Northwestern at Northwestern, and we struggled with them, but we managed to win. Maybe we played a little bit better than Penn State did because we held on to that lead late rather than letting Northwestern surge ahead and beat us by 9 like Penn State did. So that might give you some indication of how this game is going to go. I think the game plan is out now for how to defend against the Buckeyes. I think Penn State will almost certainly have been looking at the tape of the Northwestern game and the Minnesota game and the who the hell did we just play?
Nebraska.
Wow, Nebraska. Thank you. The Nebraska game, I'm certain they've looked very carefully about how to go about defending this Buckeye team, right? Putting pressure on the backcourt, trying to force turnovers. When we get sloppy, we get really sloppy. We've done a lot better than early in the season, but we have a tendency to cough the ball up a little bit. So I expect Penn State to put pressure on the backcourt, try to force us out of our comfort zone, and they've got the guards to do it. So it should be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, it looks like they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players averaging at least 10 points or more a game. Mm-hmm. One player is close to a double-double, and that is Mike Watkins.
Yeah, that's their key player. Yeah.
So I mean, it's not just one person or two people. I mean, it looks like they have a trio of people that you really got to focus on, and Ohio State's going to have to play some good defense, and they've been playing really, really good defense.
They've been playing stellar defense. Ken Palm's efficiency ratings have us as, I think, the 11th best defense in the nation, something like that. Let me look at that really quick. Blah, 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 edit time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Ken Palm has us at 12th in adjusted defense, which is very good, right? Out of 350 something basketball teams, that's a great place to be. It's certainly not Virginia, who is easily 10.5 points better in adjusted defense than we are. But look, the Buckeyes are doing a great job of forcing bad shots, right? It's there's a couple of things to watch for when you're watching a basketball defense. One of them is they can force a lot of shot clock violations. Buckeyes are forcing a few. But the other thing they do is they force atrocious shots that the other team can't rebound very well. And against Nebraska, we saw frequently Nebraska was just taking absolutely awful shots, right? These running floaters and other baskets that were just not well aimed. The players didn't take their time to square up their shots very well. They sort of were trying to bank on luck. And you saw it on the stat sheet, right? 3-point shooting at the half for Nebraska was 2 for 15. I couldn't believe that they had taken 15 3-pointers, right? Every time a team goes up for a 3-pointer against the Buckeyes, I always catch my breath because they always seem to go in. Well, against Nebraska, I didn't even remember that they had taken 15 3-pointers because it didn't bother me at all. All the shots were that bad. They were the kinds of shots where the player lost and it's not going in. And that's a credit to our defense. It's also a credit to the pace of play that Nebraska has had to have for the last 3 games. But Holtman has really got them playing good, solid team defense. They don't give up cheap, easy baskets very often. Every once in a while, though, there will be a good pass down low, but you don't see it nearly as often as the Buckeyes seem to get good passes down low. So clearly they're doing good things in sealing off passing lanes and making life miserable for the opposing offense.
Yeah, one of the good things too, it's nice to see what Ohio State is doing, and they're playing together as a team, and it's a lot of fun to watch. I think just looking at, let's see here, for Penn State on the road overall, it looks like they are 2-4, 1-3 in the conference. So that is a plus for Ohio State, that they're not very good on the road.
Yeah, but most teams aren't very good on the road, right?
Unless your name is Purdue and Ohio State right now.
Correct, right?
Which is kind of funny.
Yeah, the formula for getting into the NCAA tournament that I've said on a couple of these podcasts is win all your home games and steal a couple of road games. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is typically it's something like a 20-point swing between home and homes, right? It's about you get about a 10-point advantage over a neutral site against a team if you have the home court. So playing at someone else's place can have serious negative effects on your offense and your defense. And it usually teams will trade the home and home. Each team will win their home game when they're roughly evenly matched. So it's not terribly surprising that Penn State isn't all that great on the road. Your average Big Ten team is not going to be all that great on the road. So, but this is why fans getting out to the games is so important, because that's part of what creates that home court advantage.
Yeah. Then after that, like I said, on Tuesday, we welcome in the Hoosiers.
The who now?
The team that stole the coach that many of us wanted, but might turn out to be that we've got the better coach.
I still don't know who you're talking about.
the Hoosiers. Just let it be known that when they lose, that there will be no net cutting ceremony, since that tradition has been severed.
That makes me so sad.
I'm looking at you, Tom Crean.
Yeah, actually, you should.
Certain things.
Tom, you should absolutely cut the net after one of your really great broadcasts. Right? Those are national championship broadcasts. You should just run out there, grab a ladder, and cut down the net. Just do it, man. Go for it.
And there's a guest we won't be getting on our show.
Come on. Did you really want Tom Crean?
Look at that. I want Bert Bellama to come on our show so we can discuss.
Why?
Discuss how good the SEC is compared to the Big Ten. Come on.
Not see my Twitter banner?
Karma.
Deal with it.
All right. Yeah. Actually, is there any games besides the Ohio State games that you're going to be looking forward to? I know there's one tonight that I'm hoping kind of goes down to just knock a certain team out of the top 25. Just because we don't give a damn for the whole state.
Yeah, that's right. Hold on, let me look.
Michigan is walking into West Lafayette tonight.
No, they are not.
Yes, they are. This is Thursday.
No. Oh, yeah, of course. We're recording for Thursday. So, yeah, Michigan at Purdue. Yeah, that'll be an okay game. Wisconsin at MSU tomorrow night on Friday. That might actually be interesting. Yes, Wisconsin's a little down, but Michigan State hasn't been playing great basketball lately. It would be very interesting to see if Wisconsin can come in and steal one on MSU's home court, which a couple of teams have already demonstrated that they can do. And then Two other interesting games on Sunday, January 28th. I guess you could call it a doubleheader, even though it's not on the same channel. MSU at Maryland, and then Purdue at Indiana. Both have potential to be very interesting games, especially if Indiana is really actually on the rise. They might be able to steal one from Purdue there at home.
You know, I was sitting there today before I had my procedure, and I was watching a Big Ten network in the room, which was really awesome. And I'm sitting there, listening to the guys and Robbie Hummel. And sorry, Robbie, but I always laugh about how you tweeted out about the scoreboards, or the shot clocks breaking down or whatever. But they made a mention of how Indiana, they're on the rise. They're turning the program around. So I'm sitting there like, okay, I'm buying into this. And I go and look, and they lost to Sparty the other night, 57-85. So what is on the rise? They beat Northwestern, okay, on the 14th. They beat Penn State at home by 4 points a couple days before. They just got done beating Maryland 71-68. They beat Minnesota 75-71. And at the beginning of the month, they lost to Wisconsin. So
Hey, Shannon, cut them some slack. They're winning basketball games. That's better than they were doing before.
But these are teams that they should be winning because they're Indiana.
No. They're winning basketball games. That's better than the losses they were taking before. See, you gotta get on the positive train, right? The silver lining, right? Look for the silver lining. Indiana's on the rise because they're winning basketball games. The details, right? We don't care about the details. They're winning basketball games. Have I convinced you yet?
No.
Oh, damn it.
They lost to Indiana State. They lost the season for me after that. And then
seeing that's true for a lot of their fans too.
And seeing that they lost to Wisconsin, that was just the nail in the coffin. So I mean, when you sit there and look at, all right, their overall record right now is, I have it right, it's 12-8. All right, if they were to have a good ending to the season, and I'm not saying like beating a Penn State or beat a Purdue or an Ohio State and beat a Purdue, in order to be able to get some good wins, they have bad losses, which is going to keep them out of the tournament.
Yeah, well, we're not talking about Indiana getting better and making the tournament. We're talking about Indiana getting better, winning some basketball games, and just generally having a positive slope to their season going into the off season and going into next year, so then they don't lose the games to the Indiana States of the world.
So at what point in time do we say that Tom Crean left their cupboard bare? And
we're already saying that. I mean, look at this team, right? They've got the greatest coach that they could possibly get their hands on in Miller, right? Clearly, they should be winning all the games.
I mean, he was the coach in waiting for Ohio State, and that was what we were all hoping for because of what he was doing in Dayton. And I'm not saying that he's not the answer and he's not the better coach than Chris Holtmann. It's still early. It's still way too early to tell on that. But it just, yeah, I mean, you can't tell me because of one player that Holtmann walked into a better situation than what Miller did.
No, I couldn't tell you that.
And that's where my thing is on this whole situation. It's that Holtmann walked into more of an area. I mean, dumpster fire, if you will, just based on the way everything went down towards the end of the season for him and all that.
But on the plus side, he was coming in and forming a team out of essentially whatever was left, right? They had no reason to do anything other than listen to what he was selling, right? So the scorched earth experience that the Buckeyes had at the end of May, early June, really sort of set the stage to sort of have a Phoenix from the Flames moment for the Buckeye basketball team.
Now, I mentioned earlier, before we go here real quick, that Bart Torvik has a projection of a final record for Ohio State at 24-7. Now, I believe before we started, when we did our Big Ten preview and we kind of discussed about the Big Ten, we had Michael Citro on. You threw out a record if we would be happy with for Ohio State. Do you remember what that record was?
I do. In fact, I had just written it down because I wanted to talk about this. I had said we have 16 games left to play. How would we feel if we went 11-5 in those games? Here we are, 7 games later.
Oh,
or 7 games later, because we'd already beaten Wisconsin and Michigan weeks before.
Right.
So we're 7 games into that. Okay, and we're 7-0. To make my prediction, we would have to go 4-5 over the next 9 games. Now, how do we feel?
It's not out of the realm of possibility because, hey, anything's possible. A key injury, heaven forbid, happen, then we don't know. But I am liking the odds of that not happening a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I
agree with you.
I believe that I made a joke on Acosta Field because they said that I believe Bart Torvik has Ohio State with a 2% chance of winning the national championship.
Wow.
Oh, wait.
Wow.
I don't know where, I got to find out where he got that at, but I do believe that's what Tom said. So
wow. After that offseason, I'll take a 2% chance to win the national title. Holy crap.
Yeah, and especially based on the simple fact that I sit here and as a employee of the Ohio State University, we are not allowed to bet because it is
for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the players can't for some. I don't understand it because we're not a player, but hey, whatever. I'm not going to argue with it. I don't bet anyways.
You could still put yourself in a compromised position that would allow you to affect the outcome of games.
Possibly, even if I'm not working any kind of basketball games, but okay. So,
sure.
I would like to put some money, not through me, donate it to charity for that 2%, because, folks are going to listen to this next part of the podcast, and I've invited Dan Dockish onto the show and pay for his parking.
So to get Bart Torvik's record, he's predicting 24-7 at the end of the season. The Buckeyes would have to go 6-3 over the next 9 games. At Purdue is probably a loss. So there's one. Who are the other 2 losses?
Let's just, and I don't want to say it, but just because it's a road game and, based on the simple fact of road games are tougher, let's say that they lose their last 3 road games. Or they lose 3 out of their 4 road games because they have
4, so they
Purdue,
beat Penn State,
Michigan,
and lose to Indiana.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. It'd be a little unfortunate losing the last game of the season, but okay. I could probably buy losing at Purdue, losing at Michigan, and losing at Indiana with this team. So, okay, I could probably sign up for this team having a 24-7 record going into the Big Ten tournament.
No, I'm going to buy losing at Purdue, losing at Penn State, and losing at Indiana. I can never buy losing at Michigan.
Dude, after what we did to Michigan on our home court, there's no chance we're walking out Chrysler Arena with a win.
Hey, that was the beginning that's the beginning of the season, okay, number one. And the way I look at that game, that for me was because it was the beginning of the season and this team was still learning themselves. That was a more of what they did to themselves, Michigan-wise, than what Ohio State did to Michigan. I mean,
sure,
Michigan just was a complete
right. They're going to be pissed off, and they're going to want to get their revenge.
Right, and they had Purdue at home. Purdue walked out of there with a 1-point victory with a, as we all know, controversial ending because everything in Michigan's controversial when they don't win. And the game tonight is going to show Michigan, all right, if your revenge, what is your revenge factor? You lost at home to them on a controversial call. You obviously cannot close out games. Have you guys learned anything? I think I heard your coach talk about, they were one of the best teams defensively in the country guarding against the 3 points, the arc, and yet Purdue was just killing them from behind the arc.
Well, Purdue's been killing everyone from behind the arc, and for good reason. They've got some great shooters.
Yeah, they do.
But look, again, it's going to be something like a 20-point swing. So Michigan lost by 1 at home. They're probably going to lose by 10, 15, 20 points at Purdue. Purdue's going to blow them out of the water. I'd be shocked if Purdue doesn't blow them out of the water.
I was shocked that Michigan went into East Lansing and beat the pants off of them. So, anything could happen.
I was shocked that Rutgers almost went into East Lansing and beat Michigan State. Michigan State's been playing mediocre basketball.
Yeah, I can't figure that one out, but hey, whatever.
Can't figure out how they're still number 6, but whatever.
Yeah. All right, that's going to conclude this part of the updated section, the elongated, the newest section of the Buckeyes basketball. And we hope you enjoy the next part of recapping the previous week. Right now we're going to talk some college basketball, so I bring in my guru, Eric. Eric at the BBC on Twitter, as he is known. Eric, how we doing?
Doing all right. I don't think I've spent enough time on an Indian mountaintop to be called a guru.
Well, as far as these parts, all we have is Acosta Field and our show for Buckeye Basketball Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. So I'm going to go with guru since you and I are not beat writers, and we just throw things out there to see what'll stick, right?
All right. I guess I'll go find my robe and say some prayers to the sky.
There we go. Just when Yoda shows up, you know that you're in the wrong part of the movie.
Yeah, factual.
Don't catch my tree on fire. Sorry, spoiler. All right, so Buckeyes, they're a hot team, I would say, wouldn't you?
They're looking pretty good.
They're 7-0 in conference play. I know the average has gone down because the Northwestern game last night. That as I'm searching for my stats here because I moved everything around, that I can't tell you the score of the game because I forgot.
71-65 win at Northwestern, a place that's typically pretty difficult for the Buckeyes to play. Although it wasn't Welsh Ryan Arena, it was the place near the airport, which name is escaping me at the moment. But
yeah,
still, we always go to Northwestern, and it always seems like it's a tough game, and so we gutted one out.
It looked like it was. The way that ending was coming down, when we say it was a close one and crazy things happened at Northwestern, it looked like it was about to happen again last night.
Yeah, it sure was. We had something like a crap. That lead got up to at least 16, and if not higher than that. And it melted down. Northwestern chipped away at it. They kept applying pressure, and eventually it was a 3-point game, 68-65.
Yeah, with 1 minute left, or just under 2 minutes. It was
like 40 seconds left.
Yeah.
Very, very close call. And the Buckeyes scored the last 3 points to take care of business.
Yeah, it was a nice foul that was committed. So they put, I think it was it Tate or C.J. Jackson at the line?
It was C.J. Jackson.
And he actually made him because he was not having a good game at all last night. He was back at the turnovers, but I can't fault him just specifically for the turnovers last night. It just looked like all-around sloppy play from Ohio State. And we had Adam Jardy on our show recently, and he mentioned on Twitter that the team looked tired, and it kind of concerns me a little bit because, all right, we had this game, but now all of a sudden we're looking at a game this afternoon. By the time you're listening to this, it might already have happened. So we've got a game at 12 o'clock at the Madison Square Garden against Minnesota. It's a doubleheader with the hockey game afterwards. And then we turn around and we have to play Nebraska at home on Monday.
Well, okay, so I think part of it is maybe it's a little bit of exhaustion from all the traveling they've been doing too,
Mm-hmm.
right? 2 straight away games. Rutgers, not necessarily an easy team to play. Plus, they were coming off of wins with against Michigan State and Maryland. Okay, they're putting a lot of work in. So, am I worried about Minnesota? A little bit. They've sort of been falling off the radar recently. I literally just had the standings up and I navved away from it. But generally, Minnesota has not looked great this season. They're 3-4 in the Big Ten, 14-6 overall. They're an okay team, right? They're winning basketball games, but in the grand scheme of the Big Ten, I'm not so concerned, especially since they have to travel further than Ohio State does to play this game.
Yeah, I was actually picking Minnesota as one of the top 3 teams in the conference, and they're not looking like that this year.
No, they're not.
And I mean, in all honesty, that was a foolish error on my part. I mean, especially if you look back at the Alabama game when it was 5-on-3 for, I believe, almost a whole second half, and Alabama, they didn't go down quietly. And you would think a 5-against-3 that there's going to be definitely a little bit of an advantage there.
Yeah, you think, but it's kind of crazy sometimes. You play a little bit of pickup ball, and 5 versus 3 can turn sour on you in a hurry. But it's actually not so difficult to play 3-man defense against 5 players if the other team is not shooting the 3 ball well, right? It's pretty easy to seal off the lane with 3 players. So I sort of looked at that game and went, wow, that's really impressive. Alabama put in a lot of really good work there at the end with their 3 players to try to keep that game close. But maybe I didn't give enough credit to, or maybe I was giving too much credit to Alabama and not enough credence to the idea that Minnesota just wasn't a great team.
Yeah, and you mentioned that about 3-point shooting and stuff like that. Circling back to last night's game, Ohio State was actually keeping Northwestern, as far as their field goal percentage and their 3-point percentage, pretty low. They ended up last night 6 for 17, but I think before they hit, I'll say maybe their last 3 3-pointers of the second half, they were 2-15 or something like that, or 2-14. But it's kind of crazy how they were doing a great job, but then all of a sudden just a couple plays here and a couple plays there and a couple of turnovers for Ohio State, that momentum changed in a hurry. And it almost cost Ohio State, but thankfully they seem to have learned from previous games to where they've been in situations like that.
Excuse me, sorry. So you keep pressing the turnover issue, and actually I want to bite back on that a little bit. The Buckeyes only had 12 turnovers.
Were they all in the second half?
There was probably a good number of them in the second half, but consider that against Michigan State they only had 6 or 7, right? So it's still an increase in the number of turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, for a 40-minute basketball game, the rule of thumb is 10 turnovers is about the most that a coach is okay with. So we're only a couple turnovers past that. So I don't think it was an egregious turnover night. It certainly wasn't a night where you're turning it over 18 times, like Michigan State had a couple nights ago.
Right.
So, and you also attacked C.J. Jackson a little bit for his turnovers. He only had 2. No player had more than 2 turnovers.
Maybe it's just because it seemed like it was more. Maybe just because when it happened, sometimes
it was probably
perception.
Situational.
Sometimes it's just perception. And after watching that, it seemed like in the second half there was a lot more sloppy play as far as when I was talking about the turnovers. It was passing to players that were supposed to be in one spot but were in another spot, and it was just like ball went out of bounds, stuff like that. One of the big – go ahead.
I think some of that is the sloppy play that we saw was a little bit more egregious than we usually see, right? When was the last time we saw the Buckeyes toss a pass to someone and have that person not be there? and I think I saw it twice last night.
Yeah.
Right? So some of it might just be the nature of the turnovers too, that these were a little bit more obviously sloppy rather than, well, okay, maybe you shouldn't have thrown that particular pass down into the paint, or the defender made a really good play.
Right. Yeah, because I think Dockage even had one or two of those in the second half. So, I mean, it was affecting everybody. And one of the biggest things I know that with Tony and Tom on Acosta Field, we discussed and we were worried about, and I pointed out that, all right, what happens when Keita Bates Diop, he has a bad game, and he starts struggling shooting. We kind of had that last night, wouldn't you say?
We didn't kind of have that. I mean, he only shot 4 for 12 from the field. He missed all of his three-pointers. He was 0 for 3, right? And he was 2 for 4 from the charity stripe. That's not a great shooting night, right? So it's good that we saw other players step up. And to be fair, no one really had a great night. Micah Potter had a really good night. 5 for 5 shooting, 1 for 1 from 3, 2 for 2 from the free throw line for probably a season-high 13 points. So it's nice to see him come back after that ankle injury earlier in the season. But everybody else was sort of so-so at best. Jashawn Tate, 5 for 9. Caleb Wesson, 3 for 8. Cam Williams was 3 for 5, which is not bad. CJ Jackson was 3 for 10, 1 for 6 from 3, right? And then Andre Wesson, 1 for 3, and Dockage was a respectable 2 for 3, but he didn't shoot it very often, right? So, okay, it wasn't a stellar shooting night, right? And the usual cast characters that are the standouts weren't the standouts. We had to lean on some other players, which sometimes you're just going to have to do that.
Yeah, no, any great team has that. They have bad defensive nights, they have bad offensive nights, and somebody has to step up and take over. And you and I mentioned before, because the Spartan game, and you mentioned see, I'm looking right at the name and I can't even see it. Micah Potter. And I was like, this kid, he just, as soon as he gets in, he can't get any kind of rhythm because he's just in foul trouble. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, well, I think maybe because of his ankle injury that he might have hit his ceiling and he's going to be playing catch up and we're not going to see much out of him. And then all of a sudden, a couple games later, it's, I think, one of his best games that he's had so far as a Buckeye. And he really, he helped that team win last night or not last night, but, the other night. So with his contributions, that went a long, long way for Ohio State. And it was good to see somebody not named Keita Bates Diop come up big and have an impact on the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Having someone that can spell Caleb Wesson and do a good job of it down low, doing all of the things, right? Rebounding, playing defense, right? Okay, so he only picked up 3 rebounds, but in 16 minutes of play, it's not too far off of what you might expect for a game where there was probably a lot more ball movement than there was shooting, to be fair. But, Potter came in and he did all of the things that he needed to do to help the team win. And boy, that's a credit to how hard Holtman is probably working them. That's a credit to his teaching. And, it's a credit to Potter for managing to come back and be able to be a significant role player on this team.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was huge. And, when I say as far as not name Keita Bates Diop, just based on the simple fact that, I mean, this he's definitely one of the best players in the Big Ten. And to me, he's a All-American already. And you need to be able to rely on other people just in case future games he gets into foul trouble or he has another bad night shooting. And it's nice to know that as much as we've been concerned at the beginning of the season that this team was going to lack a lot of things, and they still do lack a lot of things, they are still a formidable team. And even with what they're lacking, it's really not something as far as they're not using anything as a crutch to get through or anything. They're rising up and they're playing above their means in a sense as far as the playing as a team and everything.
Yeah, you're right. They are playing as greater than the sum of their parts, right? You have some excellent role players. You have some excellent, 3-4 kind of guys. You've pasted a team together out of nothing but 2s, 3s, and 4s, and somehow you're getting good enough ball handling and you're getting good enough paint play to get a winning team. That's impressive, right? I am duly impressed, and it was nice to hear Andy Katz last night before the game say that Ohio State was not just in the tournament, they are guaranteed in the tournament this year, and it's just a matter of seeding at this point. Not to mention the fact we're ranked. We're ranked for the first time in 3 years. Wow. Who saw this coming, right? We certainly didn't. Beginning of the season, I'm talking about, well, this team's probably an NIT team. Holy crap. What a turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, you figure as far as Ohio State being ranked, it took them less time to get ranked than it took Michigan to beat Ohio State. Got to throw that one in there. Always have to throw that in there.
It's not a good day unless he's taking shots at Michigan.
Exactly. But, all right, looking forward to the Minnesota game we touched on a little bit. Now, one of the questions, and I want to talk about this also on Acosta Field with Tony and Tom, and I want to get your thoughts on this before, so I'm going to use this question for our show first. Going into Madison Square Garden Saturday, they also play the Big Ten tournament in Madison Square Garden. How much of an advantage do you think this could be for Ohio State for that tournament at the end of February?
A little bit of an advantage. I don't want to overplay it because I don't think it'll be significant. It helps to have familiarity with the stadium that you're playing in. It helps to have been there before, to have gone through the routines, knowing where the locker room is, knowing where, how to get back onto the court and, this, that, and the other thing, maybe seeing some familiar faces in the staff at the facility. All of these are things that can help the team stay focused on winning basketball games, which would be huge. But really, you're only playing one game, so you're not going to get a huge amount of familiarity. During that game, maybe you'll get a feel for how it is to shoot in that arena, right? Every arena has a little bit of a different shooting profile. Some are darker, some are brighter, and that changes how your shot goes. But considering the game's being played in mid-January, and it'll be a month and a half before they get a chance to play in it again, I don't want to oversell any advantage they might get out of it.
Now, let me ask you this question, because I kind of brought it up on that show too. Playing on top of the ice, and yeah, they go into the shot and, they play on top of the ice, but I don't believe they have a game that day. So I don't think, the ice is that cold, as they say, or, whatever. It just could cause some, issues with the floor or anything like that, or just be a little bit colder for the players. I mean, do you think that's going to have any effect for possibly have an effect for the players on Saturday?
Is your question the fact that they have a hockey game the same day as a basketball game, and that might affect the court conditions?
Yeah, and the team.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to affect anything at all. I do not believe that they change the temperature of the ice when they put the court on top of it. Otherwise, you get a big puddle of water. So I think the court conditions will be exactly like they are in Value City Arena. And I remember back when I was a student, there were a few games where there was a basketball game early in the day and then a hockey game later, or vice versa, and didn't seem to affect anyone particularly. So, yeah, I'm not worried about that at all.
And see, I figured I'd ask you this because I've seen where they've had, I think, NBA games or other college games where there's been an issue. So I just, curiosity. And for those that don't know, there's one person on the show that's smart and one person that's not smart. And just because Tony and Tom think, or not Tom, but just because Tony thinks I'm smart, I'm not smart.
You're quite intelligent.
Yeah. So anyways, let's back to So, yeah, looking forward, with Ohio State only has to win one more game in the Big Ten to finish 500 and two more to finish the conference, with a winning record, which when we first started doing basketball shows, who would have thunk that going into the 8th and 9th game that these are possibilities?
Not a single person, except for maybe Dan Dockich, but who the heck believes Dan Dockich about anything? I mean, heck, I was watching a replay of the Wisconsin. Who the heck was beating the snot out of Wisconsin? Must have been Wisconsin-Purdue game, and they made a comment about sour candy and who could possibly eat sour candy. Dan, you're an idiot. Sour candy's some of the best shit on the planet. So, go away.
I don't know about that because I'm not a fan of sour stuff, but I will say anybody who's listening to this show and can get it out to Dan Dockich and he can retweet this, I will pay for Dan Dockich parking at Ohio for the next 4 home games that Ohio State has. So Buckeye Nation, that's your task now, because he was complaining about having to pay for parking. And it'll be my treat to pay for his parking if you guys can get him, even get him to be a guest on our show, so we can, have a little chat with him about the Ohio State basketball team.
have a little chat with him about how bad he is as a commentator.
See, I'm not going to go there. I'm trying to get him to be on the show here. I'm not trying to get blocked. I've already blocked
I'm sorry, Dan. I'm just kidding. You clearly know the game very well.
I'm already blocked by Bert. It's kind of heartbreaking because he wouldn't come on the show to talk to me about when he was saying that Ohio State had a cupcake schedule and yet Toledo took them out. So I just, karma, right? Karma.
That's right.
So yeah, we got, the Minnesota game, and then we have Nebraska on Monday. Do you have any thoughts on the Nebraska game?
That one's going to be interesting. Nebraska's sort of middle of the conference right now. I'm a big fan of their head coach. Think he's been doing a pretty good job with them. Although it's Nebraska. There's only so much success you're going to have overall. Okay, they didn't play particularly well against MSU in back in December when we had the 2-game stretch. And
you mean a 29-point loss?
Yeah, something like that. But hey, they went to Purdue and they only lost by 12. So they beat Wisconsin, they beat Illinois. Okay, this year that's not saying much. They went to Northwestern and beat them by 15. Right. Well, we just played Northwestern at Northwestern and beat them by 6. So, as with anything in basketball, all the games it's a question of matchups. If you match up well against someone, Nebraska is sort of a run of the mill team. They come out, they play hard, they play the fundamentals, they do nothing surprisingly well, but in the same breath, they're not particularly poor in any one area. I'm hemming and hawing here, but they're a decent Division I basketball team. Could they beat us? Yeah, especially if we come out and overlook them. But I don't particularly think that they're going to be able to do that. Incidentally, they're 4-3 overall in conference.
I love their away record.
What is their away record?
1-5.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, they're 1-5 on the road, and when you look, that one, I guess, is a victory in the, was it, I just had it right here. Seriously. The Advocare Invitational. And that was down in Florida, and they beat, well, actually, no, they won 2 games down there, Marist and Long Beach State. But they've lost in New York City against St. John's. They lost to Sparty. They lost one at home to Creighton. They lost to Kansas at home. Okay, here it is. Yeah, they beat. You mentioned that they beat Northwestern by 15. That was the only road victory that they have so far.
Yep.
If you don't count the neutral sites. So, yeah,
we're lucky. We're lucky we get to play them at home.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some of their stats. Here's a little bit more concreteness. They're not a particularly great 3-point shooting team. Their best 3-point shooter is Anton Gill, who averages 9.5 points a game. He's shooting close to 50% from beyond the arc, but he's not shooting an awful lot. Probably something like 4 or 5 a game, and then hitting something like 2 to 3 of them. So they're not going to necessarily beat you from the outside. In fact, the guy who shoots the most from outside, Glenn Watson Jr., has taken 79. Well, okay, Anton Gill's taken 85 of them from outside, but the guy who scores in double digits and has taken the most, Glenn Watson, has shot 79 and only hit 24. Right? Okay, I'm not particularly worried about their shooting. Their interior play, it's not got me all excited. I don't think their center is averaging in the top 3 in their scoring. I don't think he's averaging in double digits. I'm attempting to ascertain that. That might be a total lie, because that might be Isaac Copeland, and I'm just reading it wrong. Teach me to use ESPN for stats. That's a mistake. I will not do that again.
Yeah.
Yes, Isaac Copeland is their 6'9" forward.
Looks like he's averaging almost 11.5 points a game.
Yes. Yeah. So,
and
okay.
A little over 5 rebounds a game.
So I lied a little bit. They will attack you down in the paint. They'll attack you down low, which means that there will be a little bit of a challenge for Potter and Wesson. But hey, guess what? Welcome to the Big Ten. This is how we play basketball. Mm-hmm. You get it down low, you beat each other up, and move on. That's what we do.
Yeah, It looks like their 3 best players are James Palmer Jr., Glenn Watson Jr., and Isaac Copeland.
Yes.
That's their 3-headed monster, basically, as far as, they're getting their offensive production out of, because James Palmer Jr. is averaging 16 points a game. Watson is 13, and Copeland, like I said, is just under 11.5.
Yeah, pretty good junior class. All 3 of them are juniors. Glenn Watson is a 6'0" guard. Isaac Copeland is your 6'9" forward we were just talking about, and then James Palmer Jr. is a 6'6" guard.
So hey, they can attack you and play different ways. It just also keep their other players quiet. I mean,
right.
It should be a fun game.
Yes, that I can guarantee. Every single Buckeye game so far has at least been a fun game to watch.
Yes,
so
that it has, and I am hoping that maybe I can work something out to that I am back down there after being down there Saturday for the Christian concert, Sunday for the wrestling against Iowa, which I'm very excited to watch that, and then hopefully, everybody brings it for the Nebraska game and gets loud and rowdy. Because when Ohio State comes home for Nebraska, they have 4 straight games at home. And that's going to be mean, you're looking. I mean, that's before they have to go and play Purdue. So they can get the Minnesota win and come home and keep a perfect record at home with that crazy crowd and the nut house going nuts and having fun and doing their thing. Then they go into Purdue, and could you imagine it's going to be on BTN because, ESPN didn't think this would be a big game. But Purdue and Ohio State both going for the lead in the Big Ten. Possibility.
It is a possibility, and it's a crazy possibility. I had no idea that would happen. Hey, it's a great place to be, and we haven't mentioned the 90-ton elephant in the room, which is Chris Holtmann, first time head coach in the Big Ten, is 7-0. That's the first time that's happened in 95 years.
Well, I didn't know if that was an elephant, but
that's crazy. That's crazy impressive.
I seen that stat last night, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And I mean, I have it written down here, and I've been, you put it in nicely. So there was an Iowa coach, I believe, that 95 years ago that he started off this way, if I read that correctly.
I don't know if it was Big Ten Conference basketball started 95 years ago, or if there was a coach that did it 95 years ago. I did not see that stat. But let's go a little bit crazier here, which is we have the game against Minnesota, and then Nebraska, Penn State, Indiana, and Illinois. All of those games are at home except for Minnesota. I believe OSU is favored in all of them. All 5, right? If OSU manages to win those, we start 12-0 in conference going into the Purdue game in West Lafayette. I mean, how historic of a start would that be for Chris Holtmann? It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and you were talking like another 100-pound elephant or whatever. Do you know what Ken Pom is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right,
OSU is currently 12th in Ken Pom's rankings.
Yeah, way to spoil it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, for our listeners who aren't big into the basketball or big into the stats and stuff like that, it's more advanced analysis of the college basketball. And after last night's victory, I believe Ohio State went into 13th, and then something happened last night that they actually moved up into 12th. And they're actually up above Clemson. And I actually think right now if they were to play Clemson right now and redo that game that they would beat Clemson.
I absolutely agree with that. I also think we would beat Butler if we played them. And, Butler's way down at 42. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit because of the 4 games we've lost, Gonzaga and North Carolina at 6 and 9 respectively are the only 2 that are still above us that we've lost to.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some other impressive stats here. Our adjusted offense and adjusted defense are in the top 25 nationally, where just a week ago I checked this and our adjusted defense was much lower than that. Right. We are playing much better basketball as time goes on, and Ken Pom's rateless statistics. So it's, for those who aren't in the know, his statistics take into account the speed of the game, or a better way to say that would be they remove the speed at which the game is played, so that a game that's ends with 100 possessions each way, to just give a number, is adjusted in such a way as compared to one where there's 70 possessions each way, so that you can compare the stats directly, right? So he accounts for how many possessions each team gets during the course of a game. If people are interested in the math behind that, there's a really good book I can reference for it, but I'd have to dig it out of my closet. It's all based on some rateless statistics that were set up for NBA basketball. And it has some impressive predictive powers. So It's well worth following along on kenpom.com, KENPOM.com. And his rankings are just right there on the front page, and he ranks all 351 teams in Division I basketball.
I believe there are only 5. Well, let's see here. 5 in the top 50 for the Big Ten. And Purdue is currently at number 2 behind number 1 Villanova.
Yep.
So just
correct.
For listeners that haven't checked out the site, it's Villanova, Purdue, Virginia, Duke, Sparty, Gonzaga, Cincinnati, Texas Tech, North Carolina, and Kansas. Which, if I'm not understanding, I believe there's now a home and home for Cincinnati in basketball. Did I read that correctly, that they scheduled that now?
I missed that. That's news to me.
Could be wrong, but I think I seen something about that, so don't quote me. If I'm wrong, hit me up, let me know. I'm not going to look it up right this second because we're going to be wrapping up the show here now. But, yeah, check out the if you're a stat nerd, and I will be hitting up Eric with a text and saying, hey, what's the name of that book, so I can find out and start reading it. Because I'm all about that thirst of knowledge and learning, because learning is fun. Which is weird. I didn't enjoy it in high school, but now I enjoy it. So
sometimes it's just finding the stuff that you enjoy learning.
Yeah, I think that's it too. So, all right, with that, just want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. The first half we had college football with my man Chip Minnick, and now we got my other man for college basketball, Eric at the BBC. Eric, where can people find you at so they can tell you that you're the smart one of the show?
Oh, I very much doubt that they're going to do that, but you can find me at Eric to BBC. Play nice.
We always play nice on there. I get people that tweet stuff to me and then they delete it. So I just, before we came on here, I had a Michigan fan wanting to come at me, but yeah, I just wanted to have some fun with him, but I couldn't respond because he deleted the tweet. So I'm kind of heartbroken. So that's all I do is have fun with the Michigan fans. But you can find me on Twitter at ShannonCFB. You can listen to or find our shows on Twitter at SILVR Bullets Pod. You could, the Ozone Radio Network, you could follow us on Twitter, Ozone Radio Network, Facebook, Ozone Radio Network, and Silver Bullets Podcast. Find our stuff on theozone.net. You could subscribe to our shows on YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Google Play, iTunes. Just trying to get our show everywhere so everybody can enjoy it and get in your favorite app so that way you don't have to go and hunt around and everything for the shows. Don't forget to listen to our other shows on the Ozone Radio Network besides the Silver Bullets Podcast, where we have Acosta Field with Tony Gerdeman. We have Sons of Schmidt with Mike Meals, Michael Citro, and Brandon Zimmerman. We have the Buckeye Sloopcast with Jared and Kyle. Now I'm going to forget Kyle's name after calling Jared Kyle the whole time. So I hope you guys are enjoying everything. And if you have any questions, hit us up at the hashtag AskSilverBullets, or you could email us at silverbulletspodcast@gmail.com. No, I just threw a lot of stuff out at you, but if you go and check out the show notes, I will have everything there in the show notes for you on theozone.net. So for Chip Minnick and Eric, thank you for listening, and go Bucks.
Go Bucks.